Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for episode 22 of 2023. Yes, we're almost halfway through this year. We're at update 22. 26 will mark the halfway point. And I had been on vacation for 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of May, pretty much. Didn't get a whole lot done during those 2 weeks, obviously, on the layout, although I did take some great pictures that I'm going to use on the layout. You may want to check last week's update for that. This week, I played with the train more than anything, but I did do a couple of things. One thing I did is renumber some locomotives. I had purchased 4 of the SD40Ns from Athearn. They only came out with 2 road numbers, 1574 and 1923. So I wanted to renumber 2 of these, and I chose 1654. I used Railroad Archives that has pretty much any locomotive you want to find. You can get a picture of it. Definitely recommend that site. It's RR Archive something or another. But anyway, I chose 1654 for the remote control unit, and then 1806 for the non-remote control unit. And I chose those 2 because they fit whether they were remote or not remote. And they also the 1806 and 1654 matched the decal sheet that I had as far as numbers going on the number boards, which is the hardest ones to do. So it's nice to have 4 numbers in a row for the number boards. Now, before I could put on new numbers, you have to, of course, take off the existing numbers, and there's a bunch of videos on YouTube on how to do this, but I'll just show you a quick demonstration. I use isopropyl alcohol. I have right here 91%, 71% would be just fine. This is probably overkill. In fact, you can also use diasol. That's not correct. It's from micro scale decals has a solution that you can use for this also. Check the YouTube for videos. I use alcohol. It works great. Comes off pretty easily without removing the paint. You have to be a little careful if you leave it on the when you're done. You have to make sure you wash it off with water. If you kind of leave the alcohol on there, it leaves a white film. So just have to be careful with it. It does work great. There is a micro scale solution that also works. That's what I've seen on the YouTube. This is the only one I've seen that's used the alcohol, but it does work just fine. Takes off the letters and numbers without removing the paint. Now, I did this a number of times in N scale on my Geneva subdivision and renumbered quite a few different locomotives. So this is my first attempt at doing it in HO scale, but it's pretty much the same. Did mostly Cottle locomotives in N scale. Cottle doesn't do a whole lot in HO scale, a lot of Athearn and scale trains. This is an Athearn unit, so definitely this method definitely does work for Athearn units. Now, the numbers here are not on any details, so it's just a flat surface. It's a little bit harder to remove if they're over some creases, as in any kind of detail like the doors and so forth that open up. Anyway, it was pretty easy to get that off of there. And then you notice one other thing that I wanted to do is to renumber the number boards. And you can see I just basically, instead of trying to remove them, these were not these were kind of like almost a decal on them. I'm not sure how they was applied, but it didn't come off the same as the big one. So I just used some black flat paint and very carefully painted over the numbers in black. I also did the back. Now, one thing to note, as I was looking at the pictures after I had painted over this, I noticed in the prototype photos that the back does not have the number boards. The number boards are painted yellow, and then there's the numbers that are just on the back of the locomotive. So I am going to do that. I'm going to paint these over when I get the correct paint. I'm going to paint them yellow, and then I put on a decals. Here's the finished product. This is 1654, which is a remote unit, and this is 1806. Now I tried to remove the paint from the back number board on this one and wasn't really happy. I'm still going to paint over it with yellow. Was not able to get all the paint off. This is what I painted over there, but you can see that that's the prototype there that does not have the number board. So I'm going to repaint those with yellow, and I have some I had to order some paint from True Color Paint. I did that through Lombard Hobbies, and I'm sure I'll have that fairly soon, so I'll be able to finish that up. Now, one other thing I'm going to do is paint, not paint, but add decals to this SD70. This is 3972. Picked this up on eBay, I think, or it may have been trains.com. But anyway, I didn't realize until I got it that it has the red sill. So I did get the decal sheets from Microscale, and I'm going to redo those in yellow. I'm going to put some yellow stripes on those. So I'll show you those next week. Now, one other thing I did do this week is I did put plaster gauze on this area around UTLX, and you can see I just have one layer there on there, and you can kind of see why I don't just go with the one layer and I paint over it with a thin layer of plaster so that it's a little bit more sturdy, a little harder, and then it'll seal up the edges so that the plaster is kind of sealed to the plywood. Right now, as you can see here, I just have the plaster gauze on, just one simple layer. This is the last spot where I have to reach big time. I think it's like a 5-foot reach. I did tape over the signals so that they won't get messed up. All right, and then this is what it looks like after painting it with a thin coat of plaster. And usually when you do plaster, the recommendation is 2 to 1, 2 of the plaster to 1 of water, and that'll make a pretty thick plaster, which you're not going to be able to paint on. What I do is I usually go 1 to 1 and maybe a little bit more water than plaster, so that the when you mix it up, it's more runny, and it's runny enough to where you can dip a brush in there and then paint it onto the plaster gauze. And the plaster gauze just sucks it up, and it goes on pretty smooth. And as you're working with it, I usually do you can see I got some on the backdrop, but it's going to be pretty easy to remove. See it? And I'm not really too worried about this either, because I am going to have photo backdrops up there. Maybe not quite that high. We'll have to do some touch-up of the backdrop. But a lot of the plaster that you see that's on the backdrop, close to the... It definitely leaves a mess, by the way, too. But anyway, a lot of that's going to be covered up with photo backdrops. I will have to replace that label there for the UTLX. You notice I do have all the track covered up with tape and whatever I could find. I did completely mess up my Lombard's Hobby, but it's just powder, not actual. So actually going to come off pretty well. Lombard Hobbies. This is, if you want a, this is a scale or a template that you can use to measure gauge from Lombard Hobbies. If you order from them, ask them for that, you'll get one free. I have a bunch of them. Anyway, after I did the layer, I then moved to painting the track. And believe it or not, I had a couple of bottles of Floquil Rust and Floquil Railroad Tie Brown. So I used those. I thought that would be plenty for painting the track. And I always paint the rust at an angle so it gets mostly the track, the rail. Don't worry about the ties, and then I go from straight down with a railroad tie brown. I actually ran out. As you can see, there's not enough railroad tie brown on here. I'm going to have to use some more. But anyway, I had a full bottle of railroad tie brown and a full bottle of rust, and neither of them was enough to cover all the track that I was using here. I used my airbrush. Definitely is a lot easier to control the paint with an airbrush than if you have just a can of spray paint. Here you can see I kind of ran out of the rust and out of the railroad tie brown completely. So I placed an order with Lombard Hobbies. They don't stock True Color paint, which is the paint I try to use. But you can special order it and they'll have it in no time. And I usually check Walthers to see if they have it in stock, because I think that's where most hobby shops get their supplies from. So they had it, and I placed a special order, and I did that yesterday, so I'm sure I'll probably have it maybe this week, if not next week sometime. So I'm going to have to add and kind of go back and do a little bit more painting on the track. Then once I get the track all done, then I will be able to paint the plaster and put on the ground foam and some shrubs and stuff, and it should look pretty good. And eventually, of course, ballasting as well. Now, this is the first area where I'll be ballasting turnouts. So here, anyway, we have a couple trains running through this area. Again, this is the UTLX repair facility area. It is just east of Wasatch Control Point and east of the Wasatch grade, coming up to the summit here at the Wasatch Control Point. And it is just west of Evanston and the Evanston Yard. Once I get this little piece of or section of railroad section of layout completed, then that will be the entire peninsula that is covered with a basic layer of scenery and ballast. And then I'm going to move on to something else. There are some more things I am going to do yet before I move on. I am going to, hopefully this week, get this painted and scenicked and maybe ballasted. That would be great if I could get all that done. And then the next week I'm going to see if I can get backdrops, photo backdrops, onto the entire peninsula. And then after that, some static grass. And that'll be pretty much it for a while. Might try and get some trees in also, some scale trees. And maybe work on the roads a little bit. There's not a whole lot of roads. There is a little trailer I'm going to put in, and so on. So anyway, have something to look forward to in the summer months. I do have an operating session on July 23rd, I think it is. Have a special group coming for that. And then there is the Rock Rail Ops weekend, last weekend in August. So looking to get some stuff done between now and those operating sessions, and try to get as much done on the railroad as I can with all the regular summer activities. I've been spending a lot of time on vacations, and also watching my grandchildren's baseball and softball games. So that's been a lot of fun. I'm thankful that I have this channel, because it definitely is a motivation to get something done every week. It's hard with all the summer activities, and it's also hard with the great amount of fun it is just to run trains. Usually I spend Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday just running trains and piddling around on the layout, and then by Thursday I begin to think, oh, I better get something done before the weekend. All right, that's it for now for this week. Have a great week, everyone. I'll try to do a live video and maybe some more cab rides, so stay tuned for that. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.